Hello, everyone. 412 Sports Cards here today, back with another video. And today it is an interview for the first time ever here with a friend in the hobby of mine, Steve at Advantage Sports Cards. Steve, hello. Welcome to the channel, first visitor.
How's it going, Robbie? It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and Steve asked me, said maybe he had some insights to share if he wanted to come on, and I said, yeah, like this would be fun. So anyways, Steve, welcome to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here. So my name is Steve Heiser. Again, Robbie mentioned my Instagram account at Advantage Sports Cards. I am by day a working professional in the energy cybersecurity industry. At night, I'm a father of three and husband, and wannabe sports card investor guru. So we were trading some ideas on some of the recent publications that have come out, articles and whatnot, and thought it would be a good idea to collaborate as two of the more working class collectors that are out there in the YouTube community.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Just for reference, today we're going to be talking about. It's going to be a broadly state of the hobby, kind of looking at all facets at the high end, the mid, and the lower end, and then some alternative investments in with the reference framed around a recent article featured on CNN Money about Ken Goldin and Goldin auctions. Steve will explain a little bit about that here in the future. Also, Steve, if you we probably touch on some of the Goldin's, recently selling some of the company today, which is at the day of filming. This is Tuesday.
Big
So
news.
we'll probably get to that some too. But anyway, Steve, would you mind giving the audience a quick rundown on that article and what exactly it discussed?
Yeah. So this is the CNN Money article that you referenced, and it came out, I guess, late last week. The article followed, and now we're no stranger. We've seen lots of publications over the last couple of years from Gary Vee, from ESPN, other major outlets that are detailing the rise and the growth in the sports card collecting hobby, and really its transformation from something that was a bit of a dinosaur and almost left for dead to one of the hottest commodities that's out there today. This article, however, was specifically capturing some of the information and some of the recent news around the extraordinarily high sales of high-end Michael Jordan cards, high-end Mickey Mantle cards, and other GOATs that are in the hobby. So I'm sure most of you are aware that two PSA 10 Michael Jordan rookies sold for $738,000 at Goldin auctions just recently. And of course, that drove the price of all Jordans up. They made a little bit of a run. What's different about this article, however, is that it goes beyond that to detail the fact that there's an influx of Wall Street money coming into the hobby. Now, to date, it's been mostly social influencers. It's been collectors like you and me. Yeah. But now we're starting to see the startup of actual sports card investment funds. And that injection of capital has people both excited and it has some people nervous. And
yeah.
I think
this might be the first time that you can. I know people have been saying sports card investing for a long time, but this is this is no longer in the hands of you and me, which is kind of insane. I know those two Jordans, I think, blew everybody out of the water. At least in my mind, put Goldin on the map too, which is crazy. Kind of how fast that auction house has risen. And I know one sold since then, a PSA 10. I think it was down a little bit, probably in the mid 600s, but I know there are two more up on Goldin right now. I don't know when those auctions close, but there are two more up right now. And the part that stood out to me about that article the most was Ken Goldin saying that he's fielding calls from hedge fund managers, which is absolutely insane to think about. And I heard someone saying, I think it was I was listening to a Breaker Culture podcast, and they were talking about just how just a little bit of money from some of these funds that these hedge funds run, or these mutual funds, probably not, but like some of these hedge funds run are just massive, amounts of assets under management, and even, you know, like 50 basis points of, being allocated to sports cards in a couple of these is enough to move a market the size of ours quite a bit.
Sure is,
I think
and
that's what's really
it has
powerful.
wide-ranging impacts for all of us.
Yeah, I think it does. And I know you talked to me a little bit about, visualizing three scenarios coming out of this article. You want to give the audience kind of a quick look at those?
Sure. And this stems from some of the right. There was a little bit of a discussion about the four case, which was mostly Ken Goldin saying that, despite the fact that we've seen these rises in prices, that sports cards remain a largely undervalued commodity and that growth is likely to continue. There was also sort of the con side of the article, which was, oh no, Wall Street's involved, the fun is over, the bubble will burst. And so that
Yeah.
got me thinking about both the short term and the long term sort of prospects for the hobby and for investors and for collectors. Um, and so, I thought about it in very structured fashion. Just what does it mean? What's the growth scenario look like? What's the stabilization scenario look like? And then what is the consolidation or the regression scenario? And I'd say this in the short term, if we're thinking about the short term, this injection of capital is a good thing for the
I
hobby,
agree.
right? It's going to uh, bring more awareness to the hobby. Clearly, there's more money going into these assets, so that will inflate prices. People who invested have opportunity to make money.
Yeah.
Um,
We've
it,
already seen that.
yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
you and me have seen it, and the people even right now, it stretches down all the way down the ladder. It's actually insane.
Absolutely.
This, this Nike, like a Nike promo, this was like $800 in October, and it just gone bonkers basically with the PSA 10 Fleer, which is
That's right. That's right. And I was very, very I should mention to the viewership, I was extraordinarily fortunate to get a BGS 8 Jordan rookie the
yeah,
day before those auctions closed. So
yeah, you were.
a
We all
relative
were.
deal, if you want to call it that, but still expensive. But in any case, I see the growth scenario around this as being a short-term thing, right? This explosion, this injection of capital is going to fuel growth in the industry. What I think sort of happens in the midterm, mid to long term potentially, is all of these funds are investing in incredibly high end and expensive cards, right? Now, a Jordan, his rookie, the graded population 17, 18,000 in all grades at PSA, not necessarily a particularly rare card. So it is somewhat of a commodity. You can buy them up, you can hoard them. I actually liken sports cards to other commodities, and a good parallel is the diamond industry, right?
Mhm.
Diamonds are not a particularly rare commodity. There's plenty of them. Nature has created them. What is rare, however, are the really giant, brilliant,
Oh
perfect
yeah.
stones. So those are your Jordan PSA 10s. And there's still lots of other tradable diamonds, of course. But what De Beers does as a broker of diamonds is it owns the mines, it controls the supply. And I think these funds will be doing something similar with these very high end cards, right? They're going to hold them, they're going to allow them to appreciate because they have no incentive to liquidate them all at once because they'll crash the price. So, what they're really thinking about, at least in my holding card, trickling them out to market as they deem fit based on their modeling to maximize returns. And what
Yeah.
that's going to do is right now you're seeing that explosion of capital into the market. Mid to long term, these funds will hold the cards, and that's going to eventually stabilize the market with them controlling the supply.
I think it really should. I think that is probably I I talked in a very recent video I made about fractional, and I think that the high end market with this money coming in and where the money's coming from seasoned investors, I think the prospects are really high. Kind of like you said, they know how to manage a market with limited supply. Throwing too many of these out into the market has ramifications. There are only so many buyers at that level, so you got to kind of control the supply, and I think that they'll do a pretty good job of that. I think the fact that I think with hedge funds kind of coming in increasingly, stepping in, controlling some of the supply, I think that you'll really limit that downside risk, that risk that could come from a hard sell-off. Something that you and I probably experience a lot in the cards that we deal in. We all saw it in August.
That's right.
I mean, you had LeBrons that were getting cut like 50%.
That's right.
Which I mean is what happens when it's you and me, when we're like, oh crap, like we put all this money in, and this is our kind of money that, yes, we might be playing around with it in some investments, but we don't really care to be losing, this money, or at least, or even have paper losses.
No, it's still painful.
Yeah. And, a lot of these funds, not only do they have a little deeper pockets, but they're seasoned, and they're good at keeping that emotion out of it. They're not gonna, and plus a lot of these funds are locked up for a while.
That's right.
Like the cards are gonna go in, and they're not gonna come out for a while. And I think that, I mean, at least I don't know if you have this trouble. I have trouble sometimes staying the course, even when I think holding is the best thing to do.
Yep.
I don't know.
Well,
I think that high-end market is so strong.
You're sort of getting to the consolidate case, right? The regression.
Oh yeah, go ahead with that then.
Which is that, at the end of the day, these are still non-essential commodities, right?
Oh yeah.
So they're only worth what someone else perceives the value to be. Furthermore, even in our own economy, which is a capital market, highly functional capital market, and a highly successful capital market, investors can be irrational, and they tend to react very negatively to any perception of risk or instability. And so that's why you see those kind of runs, like when the market turns bad, it turns very bad. It's not a 10% correction, it's a 30, 40, 50%.
Yeah. It's insane.
And so if the point being that, if there's any indication of risk, if there's any indication of consolidation in the marketplace tipped off by some of these funds, or as indicated by these higher end cards, then that could be a signal to sell off from and trickle down, sort of through the investor, investor ranks.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we all see it right now. That high end is kind of what sets the tone for the market. It's the sales of the Kobe refractors, that are like setting the Kobe market. I know it's not on the same threshold, but the LeBron Topps Chrome PSA 10 sets the entire LeBron market. And I know you and I are both in the Bowman Chromes, and they follow lockstep. And it's a whole topic for a whole other time, but that does create some arbitrage, I think further down the ladder, as people, are like a little slow to react. But it definitely is this high, even like for all you viewers even if the high end market isn't something that you that you have the means to be dabbling in, I have no doubt that it sets the tone for everything. And it's definitely worth being tracked. A lot of people do it, and it's because it sets the market right now that we're in.
That's right. Now, people may be saying, is there a bubble? Should I be scared? My advice to investors is, foremost, I would not approach the market with fear. If you do that, you're likely to feed some of that irrationality. And you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You want to think through things rationally. Second thing is, I would not invest any money that you're not willing to lose, right?
Oh, well, yeah, I agree with that entirely.
Almost like a casino, right? It's sort of like, well, I'm going to go in, I'm going to have a good time. If I win, I win. If I break even, I break even. If I lose, I lose. At the end of the day, the joy of collecting, the fact that you can hold these cards tangibly, which is something you can't do with a stock or with a bond. You you can physically hold the card in your hand, you can enjoy it, right? That joy, that attachment, that's what's going to keep people invested. So again, stay the course. Don't approach the market with fear. I would actually, again, in the short term, approach it with enthusiasm. I'll touch upon in a little bit some of the alternative investments that I think are really quite exciting at the moment.
Yeah.
Also, don't be afraid to take profit. If you're up, you have a good return, and you feel like you're ready to sell, don't be afraid to do so. It's okay. With these cycles, one of the fun things is that you can always buy the card back. So,
Yeah.
there's always the risk that it goes up further, and to buy back in, it's more. But more than likely, if you're attuned to the market, you'll find that opportunity to buy back in if you'd like to.
Yeah, and that's what's insane, right, about the market that we're operating in right now. The fact that you and I know it's cyclical, right?
Right.
That right now, I think we can all feel it. That some of that heat in the high end goat market, it's not as hot as it was, and things are starting to steady. And in this market, when things steady on the top end, when they reach the plateau at the top, they're usually coming back down. And what that means is the stuff that's plateaued at the bottom, which right now is modern, is that Luca. That's
this
what's
guy
on the
was
way
left
up.
for dead. He was left for dead, and all of a sudden, couple great games, this card's back over $1,000.
But isn't it insane though? Like that, and I think that these hedge funds are gonna bring some rationality and some efficiency to that efficiency, like an efficient market type of deal to that higher end market. But in the market on the lower end, it is anything but an efficient market.
Yep.
It's in theory, if we all knew these patterns, if we all knew that you buy in the off season and then you sell during the season, or like right as the season's beginning, and we all traded on it, it shouldn't be able to happen. Like we should it should be eliminated if we all act on that. But I think that I think that goes back to some of the human element. Once again, it's not going on at the top end so much. It's going on more where we are, is the people are in your minds when they're playing. And it's fun to watch guys who you own cards of. And I think that it just builds excitement so much that it overwhelms kind of that efficiency, possibility for efficiency.
Plus, so here, and you're prompting me already with some of the ideas around these alternative investments.
Yeah,
right?
Let's hear them. Bring them out.
Right. You just mentioned the fact that sports cards, right, they sometimes can be predictable as far as the cycles are concerned.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
The whole adage of, buy out of season, sell in season type of thing. Well, some of the alternative investments that we've seen really get hot, and to a large degree because all of these GOAT cards have gotten so expensive, they're pricing people out. But people are still entering the hobby. So they're looking for ways at other price points, more affordable entry points to get engaged. So what happens when, right, Michael Jordan gets too expensive? Well, we look at Kobe Bryant. And when Kobe Bryant gets too expensive, we look at LeBron James, and on down the list until you get to your Treys, your Lucas, your Zions, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But even they're expensive now. So where can you get to the market for $10, $12, $15 a card and look to make money? Well,
it sounds to me like soccer.
Soccer is one thing. I'll get to that in just a second. But we've actually seen some of this already happening. So Marvel is one area where you're seeing a lot of growth. I mean, the Marvel 1990 Masterpieces Series 1 set has already probably doubled in price in the last few months. Another one would be, for example. And I picked up a few pretty cool Star Wars cards. These are the 1977 Wonder Bread set. What's really interesting about this is, as investors kind of spread out, they're looking for the first issues. Right? These are the so-called rookies of Luke Skywalker,
Darth
Vader. All right. And these cards back in December, I think the PSA 9s were selling, $50, $60, $70. They're now into the hundreds. And they're continuously going up. The PSA 10 Luke, I of that set just sold for close to $3,000.
That's insane. No,
so
wait. What year are those compared? I've heard things of like a blue bordered tops. I
yes,
think that I heard on a podcast today. What year are your Wonder Breads compared to
it's,
those tops ones with the blue borders?
it's actually the same year. So these are
Oh,
all
okay.
1977. The Wonder Bread set was a promotional set that was offered with loaves of Wonder Bread. Now, the populations on these are very, very low, in part because they've been overlooked for so long, and also in part because you can see the super dark borders on there. They're just
Yeah.
highly condition sensitive. There are two other sets. There's the OPC 1977 set, and then there's the Tops set. Most people, when they're referring to the blue border, are referring to the Tops, which is sort of mainstream. Though both the OPC and the Tops carry that blue border in a similar design.
Those, yeah. I mean, I personally have never dabbled in this stuff, but you can feel it right now and I think this is kind of what gets back to what you said earlier about, you got to treat it like you got to put money in, that if you lost everything, it's okay. Because while I do think that there's some of these alternatives, some of these non-sport things have a ton of upside, that you could see some growth like we saw with that Marvel. I think it's hard to deny that you're kind of almost trying to feed into a culture of what's going on right now in cards, which is chasing what's gonna pop next.
Yes.
And I think you're definitely playing that game, and it's a risky game, but it definitely can pay.
Sure can. Now, one that maybe sort of splits the difference a little bit is what you mentioned previously, which is soccer. All right. Soccer, despite the fact that it is the fastest growing segment of the market among the major sports, is still relatively, I don't want to say undervalued, but relatively undervalued as compared to your big three majors, right? Baseball,
Yeah.
Basketball, and football. I'll give you a great example. So this is Kylian Mbappe, who's sort of like the wonder kid of France. He's a 22, 23-year-old, plays for France internationally, plays for Paris Saint-Germain professionally. Had a hat trick today against Barcelona, so I would imagine his prism might see a bit of an uptick. But that card, last August, the market got a little bit overheated. That peaked at almost $3,000.
Yeah.
And
it
now
might have even crossed it. Yeah.
it was close. And it's retreated so far that it's now, this is a PSA 10, it's now under $1,000. And I think, when you see a correction that big, that's a pretty good indicator that maybe it's worth a look. Right now, the fundamentals have to be there around the end. And what I see in soccer is right now they're in season. They've been out of season for a while. This year is the Euro Cup. So all those big European teams with all these big names are going to be highly, highly publicized. Kylian Mbappe, right? Team France, number 2 FIFA ranked team in the world, very legitimate chance to win the Euro. And then in 2022, you have the World Cup.
Yeah.
And through the fall, qualifying. So soccer is going to have a ton of attention on it. You can pick up a Messi or a Ronaldo 2014 Prism for under $1,000 as well. So there's plenty of opportunity for growth. These are cards that were peaking at $3,000-$4,000 each last summer.
Now, I will say, I mean, I've always been, so I played the soccer game in July and kind of sold into some of that hype. Yep. I didn't get burned, but I watched people get burned. Yep. And I think that a lot of people who got burned on stuff like those Mbappes or those, I mean, which some of it was foolish, right? Because people were buying these PSA slabs, which had low pops because it was worthless a couple months ago. Right. And then shocker, all these cards came out of the woodwork. I think that some of those losses have kind of scared some people from the soccer market, which I definitely buy into what you're saying about Euro and about World Cup, putting eyes on the soccer market. And I think that I like that idea, but I don't know. I'm going to push back a little on like the in season, how much growth there can be in season. I personally believe more in like those big catalysts, because I don't know how many card mainstream. I would consider myself a pretty mainstream card investor. I do a good amount of basketball, dabble in baseball, uh, see some football cards every now and then, but not a ton. And I don't follow soccer at all. And but if you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have even known they were in season. I thought it could, and personally, I think that's a little bit of a holdup, but I think that then again, that's why stuff's at the prices it is at, right?
True. And it's also, it's also the fact that soccer is not a mainstream American sport. And so, but the good news is that you look at something like Star Wars, you look at something like Marvel, you look at something like soccer, the fan bases for those things is as big, if not potentially exponentially bigger than it would be for LeBron. So there's a lot of growth potential out there, and I would agree with you 100% that there's more risk involved in kind of dabbling in some of these areas. But you can pick up, these are graded examples, of course, raw examples you can still pick up at affordable prices. A really good example too is sometimes when the main guy gets too expensive, right? Like Mbappe, right? $750, $800, still a lot of money to shell out. Well, here's his counterpart. This is Paul Pogba.
2014 Prism.
He's an established player. He is that's the 2014 Prism. So Paul Pogba, 27 years old, established player, been a little bit of an enigma throughout his career. So up and down from time to time, but plays for Manchester United, which is arguably the best branded sports franchise in the entire world, and plays for Team France. I mean, even if he has a so-so showing at the Euro and at the World Cup, just the attention will bring him up.
I can get behind that.
This was a card that I bought for $77. This is a PSA 10.
It's not bad.
So low risk investment with potentially very high reward. And your average investor that's looking for an opportunity can get into something like this without feeling guilty or stressed about doing it.
Yeah, and it's worth saying, I'll touch on soccer, then I want to get back quickly to the Star Wars before we move on. But those 2014 Prism World Cups, guys like that, see, those are the kind of guys that I can get behind for a couple reasons. One, first of all, 2014, especially a guy that far down the ladder, I've got my fair share of Messi's and Ronaldo's in Raw, and that top border chips up like crazy. And especially as you move even further down the ladder to guys, I mean, I know I've heard of Pogba before, so I've heard of his name before, but probably from when I played FIFA. But those cards probably weren't kept in as nice of storage. And second of all, I think when you buy a PSA 10 of a card like that, there's not, like you said, it's a low risk play, because if that card gets hot, then you're going to be the one who's winning. Much, obviously not the same, but much like when those Mbappes took off because they got hot, because there weren't a ton. I know that it's definitely an undergraded card and you might be paying for it a little now, but if you're talking about speculative plays, you're talking about stuff that could pop and you can sell out, that's a recipe to be doing quite well.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I would say this. I'd say this too. There's opportunities among the folks that we know here at home. I'll give you a perfect example. Full disclosure, two of the guys I've been buying up are Clint Dempsey and Landon Donovan. These are the definitive GOATs of American soccer. Player number one and player number 1A, no question. They share the title for the most international goals ever. Is the player to have scored more than 50 international goals and have 50 international assists. Both are former World Cup captains, multiple World Cups under their belt. I mean, their resume is silly. And if you look at where some of the young gun Americans who are very, very talented and justifiably trading at 30, 40, Christian Pulisic trades at about $80 a raw card for his rookie. Dempsey and Donovan are 4, 5, 6, 8 times less. And so, I mean, with awareness around the World Cup, the Americans likely to qualify this year, I would not be shocked if Landon Donovan and Clint Dempsey see a significant bump. And right now, you can buy their rookie sticker. I mean, Dempsey's, I was picking up multiple for $10 a lot. Donovan, $15, $20. Very easy point of entry for a.
And I was actually looking a couple of days ago. Some of those lots are a little dried up right now, but
they're going.
I mean, they're not at huge prices, but there's not a ton on there. You could definitely swoop in and make some plays, but
and you don't have to buy 20 of them, but buy 2 or 3, see how it goes. If you want to grade them, grade them. We have a little bit of time before the World Cup swoops in, so I think it's a ripe opportunity and a good speculative buy.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just that's my neighbors to the north here a little loud sometimes. Apologies, but I just wanted to get back before we move on, before we get kind of probably re-centered around that Goldin article before we kind of wrap here. Just wanted to address kind of what you were talking about, this huge audiences of like Star Wars and Star Wars and stuff like that. And I was thinking, and it seems like almost anything today that has a following has demand, and they're definitely, people might kill me for saying this. I don't know how many people I have who are wrestling aficionados. I do not view it that differently from a wrestling card. Yes, I know wrestling is like sort of sports, but wrestling is a performance. It is a performance, and you are buying cards of a performer, a character. Yes, it's like events that you can go to, but like it's more or less the same idea. And wrestling cards have caught some fire recently.
Absolutely,
and I think kind of
these are areas with cult followings. And you think about the other thing that I like about the Star Wars in particular, performances, right? These are characters, they're not athletes. These are the first issue. These are vintage, right? I'm not looking for the ones that are issued in the 1990s or, around re-releases of movies, that sort of stuff. I'm looking for the original. And these are things, vintage Star Wars is something. You look at toys, you look at, other paraphernalia, posters, things like that. These are things that have lasted and stood the test of time, which is why the cards make sense as well, especially, if you're looking for main characters that are recognizable.
I agree. And now we kind of got off in the weeds a little bit. I think we gave some good plays, kind of, I guess, some stuff that if you're feeling that the prices are getting high, if that high end of the market's dragging the stuff that you follow higher, this is some stuff that's much less tied to those high end cards that we're seeing selling at Goldin. Some opportunities that aren't necessarily moving quite as fast. But right. I guess just as we kind of approach the end, just get some thoughts on what do you think that all this, that the money being paid in these Goldin auctions, the money being put in, this institutional money, what do you think it means? What do you think it means for you and I? What is that? Do you think it brings stability to our cards? Do you think it brings, like, for example, to my, like, this, like, Bowman Chrome, like PSA 9, do you think that like has a little bit more, has a little safer, more steady floor just because of those comps that are getting set at the high end? Do you think it like doesn't matter at all? I think there's a case for both, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what it means for like the regular dude.
Love that card. That's it.
I know.
I own one too, so I enjoy looking at it. What I'd say is this: does it necessarily more ability to the higher end, higher grade cards? So your super high end investment grade, the scarce cards. I could go with the argument of yes, it'll help stabilize some of those values. The other thing I would say it does is, with these runs that you see, with each successive run, there tends to be a little bit of a run and then a little bit of a pullback. And then the next run occurs and then there's a little bit of a pullback. with each one, there's sort of a new floor set.
Exactly.
Do I see that LeBron Bowman Chrome ever being below $2,000 again? Not in the short term, right? You used to be
No, I
able to
don't
get
think
them
so.
for $1,800. Now they're $5K
It
at
was
least.
700. It was 700 in April of 2020.
There you go. So I don't see them regressing to that point. The injection of capital is going to help lift that floor. Doesn't mean that the price won't fluctuate.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that I think on sort of I don't want to burst everyone's bubble, but I do think that what we'll see is we will see potentially more of a separation in value between those higher graded cards and some of the, the sevens, the eights. Typically, right, the rule of thumb is that a 10 trades at about 3.5 times a 9, depending upon the population. What you might see is that because these funds are injecting so much capital into those 10s, it creates a premium for them. So maybe the multiple extends to 5 times or 8 times the 9 or something like that. So we may see sort of a new dynamic set in the relationship between grades.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of set a tone that almost everybody seems to be following nowadays. It's set this tone of some people are called grail hunting, hunting for grails, but it's a consolidation craze is what's going on. And I've been a part of it. Like for right now, for me, I've wiped out a ton of my more modern stuff. Just sold the trout today, but
good. Congrats.
Yeah.
Congrats.
but I'm basically now I've got a ton of my value just stored in a couple big parts. I'm way more consolidated than I ever used to be. I've got a LeBron, an MJ, a Hank Aaron, and then like a 55 Jackie Robinson that's in decent grade. And like those are like the core now. And I've consolidated up into those, and I've sold off a bunch of stuff, and I think it's going on at every level, right? So like there are people that are like where I am who are creating selling pressure on modern, right? But then there are people who have double the money I have, who have triple the money I have, who are putting selling pressure on that Bowman Chrome PSA 9 Braun that I have, on that Hank Aaron PSA 4 that I have. And I think that it's not just a separation that you're going to see between the 10s and the 9s. It's a separation that along every level. And I think that I feel like you just got to obtain. I mean, people were saying it years ago. They're saying buy the best card you can in the best grade you can. Well, it wasn't exactly true back then, I don't think, about the best way to do it. But right now, I think that things are just separating. Yes, I do think there's some opportunity in modern to speculate and stuff. But on speculative plays, they're fun, right? We all like them. But there's that gap is spreading, particularly on cards that you're talking about, like an MJ Flair or something. We'll just use that as a good example because a PSA 1's still worth good money, right? That's why every grade, I think, is getting further and further apart. And yes, the 10's going to outpace the 9 by more than it used to. And I think that 9's going to outpace the 8 by more than it used to.
That's probably,
and you're just going to see that.
I buy that as well. And, at the same time, you talk about cycles earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, with the consolidation, things like that Luka I pulled up get forgotten about. And then all of a sudden people circle back to it after he has a few good games. So the other thing that I would add, to be mindful of is your time horizon. So, are these short-term plays you're looking at? Are they long-term plays? If you're holding the card long-term, probably best not to track the price day to day because you'll drive yourself nuts.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. I'm a victim of doing that.
Yes. But if you're looking at that speculative play for, say, a 90-day flip, tracking the dynamics in the population, where's the 9 selling versus where the 10 is selling, so on and so forth, tables could widen as people consolidate into the higher grades and the bigger cards. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a very good point. I think that, like you said, you definitely need to be aware of your time horizon. And I guess this is kind of what I if I had to sum up everything of how this kind of relates to you and I, it's that I think you're going to see some more stability in the higher grades. I think that people might say, oh, the stability. I mean, the market's been insane, but if you're someone who's holding for a longer run, you don't mind that stability. I mean,
No,
I would sure like the stability. I mean, if you talk about grading your quality of your investments on like a risk adjusted return basis, that stability provides a lot of value for you. And I think that there's this stability at this high end that's coming in that's really good. And there's also some negligence of like this more modern and more speculative stuff that I personally have a lot of fun dabbling in that. So
Yep.
I think that, being able to buy some stuff at some more affordable prices than it used to, have some fun there, maybe make some quick flips. I don't know. I'm optimistic. I think there are places that are safer to park your money than there used to be. And there are places that are a little cheaper than they used to be to play around, get speculative, and,
Sure.
try to make some quick money.
And I think the culminating point here, as relating back to the article, is just that the injection of capital in the short term is likely to mean just more excitement for the hobby.
Yeah.
And that includes today's news about the major stake purchased in Goldin auctions.
Who all was in that? Mark Cuban is involved in that.
Right.
In that group. Kevin Durant's involved in that group. Someone else might
And
be
it was
insane.
wasn't any money to sneeze at. It was $40+ million.
40 million. I'm
Yeah.
not sure for what kind of stake it was, but that's nuts.
Yep.
I think I think 2 months ago, there's no way they could have gotten that whatever kind of a valuation they got today.
That's right. I agree.
And it's insane to say it, but like Gary V, who's like the market going, up, up, up. But like it's insane how hot things have been recently. But like, yes, there might be a little bit of a lull, but I think there's more to go, which is, I keep telling myself I'm crazy, but I believe it.
Yep, I tend to agree as well. And if the basic fundamentals around commodity trading, right, the injection of capital into the market, we're likely to see the run sustain for at least a little while longer. The merry-go-round won't stop just yet.
Yeah. Well, if you're good to wrap it up here, I think that's a pretty good way to end it. Thank you so much, Steve, at Advantage Sports Cards. Check him out on IG. Post some nice pictures, high quality pictures, may I add.
I try. I really
There's
do.
some good lighting. Check out his captions. There's effort in those captions. And,
you should see me trying to take those pictures. It's like an acrobatic act to get the angles right.
I think we can all respect the game of trying to take those pictures without shadows. Does a good job. But anyways, thank you, Steve, for coming on. Anyways, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you next time. Hopefully with more interviews like this. They're fun to do.
Thanks, Robbie.